Ladies and gentlemen, in person, give it up to Jamie Kern Lima, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for her. Hey, Jamie. Oh, come on, let her hear you from around the world. It's Jamie.
So grateful to be here.
Oh, yes. Jamie, so great to see you. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to hand the ball to you so you can share your story. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. So great to be here. Hello, everyone. What an honor. Oh, my goodness. I honestly, just watching that video makes me a little emotional, because what a lot of people know is that story, that video, the things in there almost didn't happen. Like, they literally almost didn't happen. My real story is a girl who spent most of my life not believing in myself. Like I don't know if you can relate to this, but I've always had these kind of big hopes or goals or dreams, but I never really understood how to believe that I was worthy of them, or that I was smart enough or talented enough or enough, period. And there was one moment that changed my life, and that's why I am emotional right now, because all together right now, all 1.4 million of us, right? 1.4 million of us, think about that, by the way, we're all together live right now. Like, the collective energy and power and beauty and possibility, we are all together live, right? And when I think about this moment, what I think about is about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, I was working, as Tony mentioned, as a waitress at Denny's. I saved my tip money to get Tony Robbins audio tapes, and then to buy a ticket to a seminar. I walked in this seminar. It was in Washington State a little over 20 years ago, very similar to Unleash the Power Within, if you've been there. And I went to the very back row, literally not like sort of the back, the very back row. And there was over 10,000 people there. And what I didn't know was that day would literally change my entire life. Like, it was there at Tony's seminar that I made the decision to believe that where I come from, right, where we come from, doesn't have to determine where we're going. And it was that day that I made the decision, right, to assign new meaning to things, and to learn that when you change the meaning you assign to things, you can change your entire life. It was that day that I actually decided to believe, like, maybe these crazy, wild hopes and dreams I have for my life, like, just might be possible. So that day was huge for me. And standing here now with each one of you is such an honor, because here's what I know. Here's what I know for sure is self-doubt kills more dreams than almost anything else. Whether you are a man, a woman, no matter what you do for your profession, doesn't matter. Self-doubt kills more dreams than almost anything else, right? And for me, it literally almost single-handedly changed the course of my life. And it was really learning how to believe in myself. It wasn't learning necessarily just business strategy or, all the things that we can learn. It was learning how to believe in myself that really changed the course of everything. It's really how I started in my living room with close to no money and then built a $1 billion company, right? Because here's the thing, like, whether you have big hopes and dreams in your life, in your business, or maybe in your personal life, or in your family, or in relationships, right? In your love life, wherever your big goals are right now, it's not enough just to have clarity and know what they are. And a lot of times we think, okay, I know what it is, I'm going to go for it, that's enough. It's important, but it's not enough, right? And even if you know why, a deep why for it, so important. You know why with clarity, it's so important, but it's actually still not enough for your hopes and dreams to happen, right? Then when you take massive action, which so few people do, when you take massive action, you go for it, it's still not enough. You also, and most importantly, have to learn to believe you're worthy of your hopes and dreams, right? It's that identity piece that Tony talks about so brilliantly. And that is the one thing that truly changes everything. Because here's the thing, like, you don't rise and accelerate to the level of your hopes and goals and dreams. You actually fall or plateau to the level of your identity, because you can only ever accelerate to the level that you believe you're worthy of. So for me, that's really the one thing that's changed everything in my life. And why I'm so honored to share the next few minutes with you. We got a few minutes together, y'all, today, so we're not just gonna make it through, we're gonna make it count. I hope you're all with me. We're gonna do some real stuff in the next few minutes all together, okay? We're gonna make these next few minutes count. But when I think about like 1.4 million of us right now, right? Imagine if we all together just turned down the volume, even a little, on self-doubt, and turned up the volume on self-belief. Like, imagine what would happen. When I imagine 1.4 million of us doing that, like, I get emotional about it because I think about what's possible. I think about, I imagine the businesses that might be launched and birthed right now. I imagine the unhealthy relationships that might end. I imagine the person that might say, I'm going to choose to love me even if it means I lose you. I imagine the books that might be written starting today. Like, when I imagine what's possible, that is just why I'm so honored and grateful to be here. And so in our next few minutes, if you're going to hopefully join me at Unleash the Power Within, I'm going to go so deep on so many things, including my story. But in the next few minutes here, I'm actually going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to share something I've never shared on any stage before. But it's one tool and one thing that really, truly changed my life. And I want to share it with you. And my hope is that moment I had, right, as a Denny's waitress, which, by the way, I love that job. I love that job. That moment that I had, though, with Tony at that event where I was like, oh, wow, as of today, my life is never going to be the same again. My hope and prayer for you is maybe in these next few minutes we share together, or maybe for you it's one of the 5 days of this challenge, or maybe it's at UPW coming up. My hope and prayer is you have that moment in your life where you're like, okay, from this day forward, my life's never going to be the same again. So I want to dive in, and I just want to kick this off with one question for you to think about. If you had no fear of failure or rejection, what would you do? And share with me in the chat, because I'm going to read. Oh, I love the chat. I see you guys in there right now. I want you to share this in the chat and write it down. If you had no fear, really think about this. If you had no fear of failure and rejection, what would you do? What would you do right now, right? I see a lot of people sharing in here. This is amazing. Start the business, write the book, be the best grandmother ever. I want you to think about that right now, because here's what I know, and this is what I'm going to talk about for the next couple minutes. When you change your relationship with rejection, you change your life. When you change your relationship with failure and rejection, you single-handedly change your life. And for me, this was really one of the big things that changed everything on my journey, but it can apply to you in every part of your life. So, for me, I have hereditary rosacea. You saw it maybe in the video. It gets really red and bumpy. And, I had this dream, not just of launching a makeup company that would cover and solve my issues, because I couldn't find anything that would work, but I wanted to do something actually way bigger. Because what I realized on that journey, right, was that, why there's thousands of makeup companies. Why won't something work for me? Then I realized, I've never seen a makeup company with models that look like me, that have bright red, bumpy skin, and they're like, look, selling the product. So I actually had a bigger vision where I was like, well, my whole life as a little girl, I love those beauty commercials. Like, I aspired to look like them and the ads in the magazines, but deep down inside, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. So I had this vision where I was like, if I launch a product that actually works for me, what if I could change the whole definition of beauty in the whole industry, right? And put real people as models, like every age and shape and size and skin tone and skin challenge, and call them beautiful models and mean it. And what if I could help shift that definition of beauty for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown woman who still does. So I had this big vision, but when I launched the business, y'all, any of you who are entrepreneurs, you're going to probably connect with this, or maybe you're putting your art out into the world, or your works out into the world, your writing, whatever it might be. I was faced with so much rejection, right? From the moment I launched that business, it was over 3 years before I could afford to pay myself. It was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's, no after no after no after no. You know, you saw QVC in that video, and they told me no for several years. We eventually built the largest brand in their history, but it was years of not just no's, but you're not the right fit, right? A lot of the big department stores, the no's that they shared were so painful. And so many of us are so tempted to quit after 1 no, or 5 no's, or 10 no's, or 20 no's, right? Because we think like, oh, it must mean we don't have what it takes. I remember, getting down to our last few dollars, literally, and there was a potential investor that was interested, and he got in a hold of our product, and I was like, this is going to be huge if he invests. Like, he'll get me into all these stores that keep telling me no. And we did all the meetings, and we flew up for the final meeting, and his team was amazing, and I thought he was going to change my life that day, and he did, just in a different way than I knew. We got to the very end of the meeting, and I poured my heart out with our whole future product pipeline. And he was standing about 3 feet from me in person, and he says to me, congratulations, it's a really great product, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And this was my, 4th or 5th hundred no, right? And I was just gutted, and I said, okay, can you tell me why? And he got really quiet, and he says, you want me to be really honest with you? I'm like, yes, please. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And when he said those words to me, it was like a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt flooded my body. I actually never got mad at him at all. I felt no anger. I was just gutted, right? And something happened in that moment when he said those words to me. I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. I got this deep feeling right here. I could feel like it was yesterday, a deep knowing that said he's wrong, And in the pit of my stomach, I didn't know how I was going to prove it, but I knew it, right? But I had this big rejection. And what I learned to do is what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. I learned to change my relationship with rejection and fear of failure. And y'all, it changed my entire life, literally my entire life, okay? So here's what I want to ask you, and then we're going to dive into it. And be super, super honest, okay? In your life right now, when you feel rejected, or you feel like you failed at something, or you put your idea out there and no one loved it, or you put your work out there and no one bought it, or you hope to get invited to the party and the friend didn't invite you. When you feel like you've failed or been rejected, what is the first thought you have? What is the first thought you have? Be very honest, and I want you to write it down, and if you're able, please share it in the chat, right? One person says anger, one person says I'm not good enough, one person says they're right? Let's see, we have Sonia saying I'm not good enough. You guys these are good ones. These are as mean as mine are. But for me, most of my whole life, every time I was rejected or would fail, for me it was always oh yeah, there's proof again I'm not enough, right? Some version of I'm not smart enough, or I don't have what it takes, or I'm unqualified. That was always what I told myself, right? Every time. And remember what Tony just taught us yesterday. Anything you add on the end of I am starts to become your identity. Right? So think about this. I see a lot of you nodding right now, some of you getting emotional, but think about this, right? As we go through our life, when we're thinking those things to ourselves, right? So one of the things that I did was I'm I need to change my meaning I attach to rejection and failure. If I'm going to get this business off the ground, if I'm not going to quit, if I'm going to go after my dreams, I need to figure that out. And y'all, I started Googling every hero in my life, every person I admire. And what I realized is all of them, the most successful people in the world, they failed the most. They failed the most, right? And the more I Googled it, I'm oh, the people who succeed the most are the people who fail the most, because they're the people that try the most. And I had that epiphany, and I decided that day to rewrite my definition of rejection. Every time it happened to me, it used to be, oh, I'm not enough. I committed that day, right? And then I wrote a few more. Every time rejection happens to me, I instantly think like, oh, I'm victorious because it means I'm one of the brave ones willing to go for it. It means I'm one of the brave ones willing to go after my dreams. And literally to this day, I believe it in my core, right? Anytime that old belief comes up, I instantly replace it with, I'm one of the brave ones willing to go for it, right? That investor who said, women won't buy makeup from someone who looks like you. I remember that moment, you guys, the second he said that, when I got that feeling. For me, I felt like it was God like whispering something to me. For you, it might be the universe or whatever you believe. I'll never tell you what to believe. But when he said those words to me, I got this feeling that said, no, you're not rejected. Like, I hid your value from him because he's not assigned to your destiny. And I don't know who needs to hear this today, because it can apply to you. Maybe if it's a past relationship that, really hurt, or someone in your family, or something that didn't go your way. For you, it might be God or the universe or your creator saying, oh, no, you're not rejected. Like, I hid your value from them because they're not assigned to your destiny. And when you have new definitions like that, they change your life. One that I use all the time is, rejection's God's protection. And I believe it. Like the day that I sold my business to L'Oreal, we sold for $1.2 billion cash. It was all over the press. It was on the homepage of the Wall Street Journal. It was everywhere. That was the first day, y'all, that I heard from that investor, the first time in over 6 years that I had heard from him. And he said, congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I was wrong. And what I wanted to say to him, I don't know if you remember I don't know if you remember that movie Pretty Woman, where like they wouldn't help her in the store, and then she goes back in. Like, what I wanted to say to him was, big mistake, like huge. Like, I can give you 1.2 billion reasons why it was a huge mistake. But I didn't say it to him. I kept it classy, because here's what I know. I had changed my relationship with rejection, right? And I was like, oh, if I had partnered with him when I was so desperate and had no money, he probably would have changed everything about how I built the company, right? So it's like, oh, rejection's God's protection. So for me, that was the new definition. So I want you to take a moment right now and write a new definition for you that is true, that is authentic. Every time that, you're fearing even going for it, right? You're fearing failure or fearing rejection. What is that new definition for you? Literally, you guys, walking out here, 1.4 million people, my old definitions are tempted to kick in, but I'm like, oh, right? I'm one of the brave ones, willing to go for it, willing to pour my heart and soul out, and I tell myself that, and I believe it. So share, please, in the chat. Yes, rejection and failure are my best teacher. Rejection is God's protection. Your new definition that you're going to commit to yourself to sharing every single time you're tempted to think that old one. So this is, just a tiny single tool at UPW. Oh my goodness, we're going to go hours deep. It's so good. But this one right now, I promise you, if you apply it to your life, it can change your entire life. And this is, in your personal life too. Like, I was adopted and given away at birth the day I was born. And there was a season in my life where I felt rejected and unwanted. And I decided to apply this there, right? I decided like, oh, my birth mom and birth dad, they were together just one time. I wasn't rejected. I was chosen. Like God brought me into the world, right? My birth mom carried me in hiding, that then gave me up for adoption. Oh, she didn't give me up. I'm not unwanted or unloved. She chose the hard route of keeping me, right? My adopted mom and dad who brought me into their lives, they chose me. So for me, it's like, oh, I'm not rejected. I'm chosen, right? And when we do this, it really turns our life and the meaning we assign to things into ways that completely empower us. So I am, this one tool has completely changed my life. Like, I could have never started in my living room with close to no money and built a $1 billion business if I didn't learn to change my relationship with fear of failure and fear of rejection. And, after I sold the business and stayed for 3 years, I made the decision to step away, write my first ever book called Believe It, which is all about, how do you go from underestimated to unstoppable? And just like Tony, I donate 100% of the proceeds, right? So now we've donated millions and millions of meals, but I never would have gone for it. I never would have written it or put it all out there if I hadn't learned to change my relationship with rejection, to change my life. And so in closing, I just want to say, 1.4 million of us are together. And I have been spending the past 2 days, by the way, on my Instagram, reading all of your posts on Tony's Instagram, on mine, all of your DMs, seeing all the things that you want to do in your life, all the things you want to accomplish, all the personal goals you want to step into. And I know it's been a hard season for so many of us, a hard 3 years. But here's what I know to be true. Because so many people say to me, like, how did you start with close to nothing and build this billion-dollar business from your living room? It's like, yeah, I worked really, really hard. And I got back up every time I got knocked down. And I eventually built a team of over 1,000 people, way smarter than me. And they were all in. But how did I learn to build a billion-dollar business from my living room? I learned to change my relationship with fear of failure and rejection. Like, how did I learn to build a billion-dollar business in my living room? I made the decision to believe that I could. I made the decision to believe that the power in me was enough and that I was worthy of it, right? And to believe in that power that's in me, just like I believe in that same power that's in you right now. It truly is. It's in you right now. And as I close today, I just want you to consider, what is that one thing right now that you're going to change your relationship with rejection or fear of failure on? Maybe you're getting on the dating app tonight. I don't know what you're going to do. Maybe you're going to join me at UPW, right? And my hope and prayer is that you make your dreams your plans. My hope and prayer is that you ask yourself, what will you do with the power that is you? And then you listen to and live the answer. I am so honored to be here. I love you. I hope you're going to join me at Unleash the Power Within, y'all. So it is the most life-changing thing in the world. And I want to say this, I'm going to be there. So if you're there, like hugs, all the things, because I want to hug you right now through the screen. My little kids hug me on FaceTime. I want to just dive in and hug all 1.4 million of you right now, but I hope you'll join me there if you can. And, just so you know, on the UPWs where I'm not speaking, I actually go as a student. Every single year, like you saw the video when I just taught that class with Oprah, she's the same. We all believe in the power of being a lifelong student, right? And as Tony says, success leaves clues. And, part of why I'm so honored to be here today is I know that I am the exact same as you. And every one of us is doing the best we can. Every one of us has this gigantic heart inside of us and power to serve and to give and to create and to ideate, right? We can all feel that force that's inside of us. And I'm just honored to be here with all 1.4 million of you as this giant collective force for good